as you are able for our reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone. And the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." The word of God for the people of God. You may be seated. I feel like I should also give God thanks for the beautiful flowers or whatever is blooming and pollinating and getting ready to grow around here, because my eyes feel like they're on fire, which is why you keep seeing me dab my eyes. But I'm thankful for that, because that means life continues. Through the pollination of our trees and our flowers, everything gets to bloom again. In our gospel reading and our Old Testament reading today, we read the story of two groups of people. In our Old Testament, we saw the story of Joseph. As I was reading through the Old Testament reading, I was thinking to myself, that's a lot of characters. There's a lot of people in that story. And as I looked at each of Joseph's brothers, I thought to myself, each and every one of them is different in their own way. Every brother has their own personality, just like everyone in here does. So in the story, as we were reading through it, are you Joseph? Which one of those brothers' personalities matches yours? Are you Joseph, the dreamer with your heads in the clouds, optimistic that no matter what goes wrong in his life, it's all going to be okay? Obedient. People like him almost instantly, except for his brothers. Are you Israel? Old and wise, but also a little bit oblivious to what's going on in your own household. Maybe a little bit overly focused on your own perceptions and the world. So sometimes you miss things. Are you a random stranger along the side of the road? Feel like maybe you aren't the main character in your own life, but you're just there to help, give direction to others, and guide them along their own paths? Or are you one of the multitude? Jealous, quick to see what talents and blessings others have, and make the assumption that maybe you're not deemed as good as they are, or that they're better than you, or they're luckier than you. Maybe even once in a while, from time to time, try to sabotage them a little, because your life seems like it's more difficult than theirs. Are you the nameless brother who is the leader of this pack? The one who conspires, comes up with ideas, and then gets others on board because you don't want to have to take responsibility for what might go wrong? Or are you Reuben? Moments of strength and courage to stand up for injustice, but then lacking the strength to fully carry through, to backing down, to not being quite certain about yourself? Are you Judah? Taking a plan that someone else made and building on it, going, "Oh, I can make this a little bit better." There's a lot of different characters, a lot of different roles that people play. We all have good traits about us, things that we are encouraging, things that we help others, but we also are all flawed. And it turns out we haven't really gotten a whole lot better over time. Reuben and Peter kind of have a little bit of the same personality here. They both had that moment of strength, that moment moment of, I can do this, and then, like Peter, he lets go of it a little bit. It's there, but it's not fully there. Characters in our lives are important. We need different people of every kind. Just as each sibling has their own personality that builds to create a family. It took 12 tribes to make Israel. 12 personalities, 12 different ways of ruling, 12 different ways of thinking. We have to have at least that in our lives. Because otherwise, if we only know how to approach things from our own direction, we're not going to get very far. We build off each other. We learn from one another. But we all want to be perfect. We all want to be flawless. We all want to be able to do things on our own. And despite the overwhelming evidence that Joseph and Peter have shown us, 11 out of 12 brothers, 11 out of 12 disciples, still continue to believe that their circumstance in life is what creates their character, as opposed to their character creating, shaping, and influencing their life. It's amazing how, out of all the people in this world, our Bible is showing us, in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, that 11 out of 12 think that life determines who you are. It's only 1 out of 12 that takes things into their own hands and thinks they can create their own circumstances. That's less than 10%. That's not very good odds. Look how quickly Peter tries to shift responsibility, though. Even the one who did try to take things into his own hands, how quickly he shifted over to Jesus rather than trusting in his own faith. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." He gave them that reassurance. And immediately, Peter answers him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you." Because I'm not willing to take this upon myself at this point. I'm not willing to fully trust my own faith. I need your reassurance too. And Jesus gave it. But did you notice? Jesus reached out his hand. He didn't grab Peter and pull him out of the water, yank him up to safety. He reached out his hand. Peter was still responsible for taking that hand and pulling himself out of the water. Jesus was just coaxing him along a little bit, trying to help him out. He helped him. He didn't do it for him. Last week, we had multiple lightning storms out of my house. They seemed to be sporadic. Some people got them, some people didn't. It depended on where you live. But the one out at my house was significant. I haven't seen that much lightning in a long time. There were brilliant flashes of light coming very near to my house, booming thunderclaps. And my grandmother's dog, Bella, who has always been afraid of storms of any kind, was absolutely terrified. Anytime there's a loud noise, she cowers, she hides, she shivers, she shakes, she follows me around, she paces everywhere. Drives me crazy because I love thunderstorms. They are one of my favorite things in life. They're beautiful. They might be a little bit scary, but they are just absolutely stunning. Dealing with this dog who's always having a panic attack the entire time drives me crazy. And then, my new little puppy started doing it too. Now, granted, there was good reason for this. The lightning was hitting very near to my house. It wasn't without cause. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself, there is no way I am going to deal with another panicked dog for another at least a decade or more. So I did something different. I grabbed my dog's favorite toy, and I got down on the carpeting, I left the front door open wide so you could still hear the rain and the wind and the patio furniture blowing around. And I played with her. I bonked her on the head with it at first, and she didn't appreciate that very much. She just looked at me. And the next thunder clapped, and she shook, and she was startled. But then I teased her with it a little bit, and I got her engaged. And we started playing. At first, she would stop when there was a loud clap of thunder or something would get blown over outside. But after a few moments of me reassuring her, of just showing her it's fine, I'm not afraid, we can still play, there's nothing going on here, she just played. Until I could throw it, she would go get it, bring it back. She didn't care what was going on outside. Meanwhile, I swaddled Bella in a blanket and stuck her in the crate right next to us. I didn't just leave her there. Tied her up as quick as I could, like a little baby, and stuck her in the crate nearby. It reminded me of this story. She was like Peter. She was a little bit nervous. But I was able to show her something different. That you don't have to be afraid. That is an option. But that's not the choice she had to make, because I have tried to do that with Bella, the other dog. Bella chooses not to engage, not to take the console given to her. She chooses not to play to the storm despite what I am doing. We have that choice in life. When there is a storm going on in the world around us, we can choose to accept the consolation being given to us. Or we can choose to be terrified. That choice is actually ours. We don't look at it as a choice a lot, but it is one. Because the reality is, if we truly trust in Jesus Christ like we say we do, we don't have a darn thing to worry about. And you might say to yourself, well, that's great. If you have that person in life who is willing to not just grab you and pet you and say, oh, it's all going to be okay. Because that seems like what most of us want to do, right? 9 out of 10 people probably, when someone is afraid, the first thing they want to do is grab them and hold them and just tell them it's all going to be all right. And yet, oddly enough, human instincts are wrong. Because what that does is then, every single time the storm comes or something terrifying happens, we want coddled. We want snuggled, swaddled, hold me until it's all over with. Because you know what happened when the lightning came back 2 days later? Bella shook and shivered, and I swallowed her and stuck her in the crate. But the puppy brought me a toy. She learned from that. She chose that route. She could have gone back to the other way, but she didn't. She chose to bring me something. Which is why we don't always have that person in our life who knows to fight their basic instincts to coddle and actually teach them something new. Most of us know that we are not that person. Because that's not our instinct. The Bible's telling us 11 out of 12 of us not going to take the right choice. Not just the right choice, the one that's going to lead to something different. That's why we do Vacation Bible School. That's why we baptize children into Christ. Because we know that we are not always going to be that rock during a storm. That sometimes we're going to be afraid ourselves. Or we are not always going to be there for our children. Our children are going to go away to college. Sometimes they're just not going to be near to us. Sometimes they're just not going to be at our side for us to be able to grab them when the storm comes and hold on to them. But we know that God will be. And if we teach them when they're young to rely on God, to pray to Jesus when there is a storm, to trust in Him rather than relying upon another human being to provide them consolation. Because he's always there. They don't have to go find him. They don't have to hunt him down. They don't have to travel anywhere. All they have to do is know that he's standing there. But our disciples had that too. We're supposed to learn from our disciples. Learn from their flaws, learn from their errors, their mistakes. They had Jesus Christ right there in person, who had been walking with them, talking with them, teaching them. But when the storm came, they still weren't ready. They still wanted him physically there with him, and even when he was coming to them, they didn't recognize him. I like to believe that is a choice. I like to believe that we can make that choice. We can learn to choose that. Life doesn't have to determine our character. Our character determines our life. It doesn't change what's going on in the world around us. It doesn't erase the trials and the tribulations. Those are all still going to be there. But we can choose how we respond to them. We can choose to act with confidence, knowing that Jesus Christ has our back at all times. That he is our safety net in life. We're going to get through it. We have no reason to act it out of fear. We can engage in something else. We can act despite of the fear. We can take that energy and put it somewhere else. We can be the 1 in 12. The one that steps out of the boat into the water. I still, by the way, that whole thing, why did you get out of the boat? That makes no sense to me anyway. I think it has something to do with human patience. He wasn't willing to wait and let him finish his walk to the boat. He wanted the problem fixed now. And so he tried to go. But his faith wasn't strong enough for him to go. He had the faith of a mustard seed. But it grew after that. And the disciples' faith grew. We don't have to be victims of our circumstances. What happened in our past, no matter how tortured, tormented it was, very few of us, probably none of us, had siblings that actually did sell us into slavery, despite that all of them thought about it. We don't have to be victims of our past. It happened. But we do have to make decisions to move forward. We do have to act with the confidence of a safety net that travels with us always. We do have that person with us at all times that brings us comfort. We do have the ability to give that faith and comfort to every child we encounter. To teach them our faith, to teach them our religion, our doctrine, our practices, so that they don't have to be victims of their own life circumstances either. That they can choose who they become through those circumstances. These stories are about building character, about taking who you are, the gifts you are given, and responding to life in better ways. Ways that bring you closer to Christ, closer to your purpose. Because that's why God gives us these stories. So we can look at them, so we can see the people, so we can relate to some character in that story and see them as ourselves. And like that older sibling, that us younger siblings, strive to be more like them. Strive to be the character